The ballroom at the Fairmont Grand Hotel was a breathtaking scene, like a painting brought to life from the most luxurious dreams. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, casting light onto rows of long tables draped in pristine white linens, creating an elegant and timeless atmosphere. The soft melodies of a string quartet filled the air, blending with the sound of cheerful conversations and the clinking of champagne glasses, transforming the room into a symphony of light and sound. This was the annual charity gala, a grand event that gathered the most prominent figures from various fields. Business leaders, artists, journalists, and politicians, all coming together to support a foundation dedicated to helping underprivileged children. Though everyone was dressed to impress, the atmosphere remained warm and approachable as lively conversations flowed throughout the room. Amid the glittering crowd, a particularly striking figure appeared: Barron Trump. At just 18, his towering height and composed demeanor naturally made him stand out, even though he wasn't trying to attract attention. Invited by a family friend, Barron chose a modest spot near the far end of the room where he could quietly observe everything without being in the spotlight. Clad in a sleek black suit, he sat calmly, his sharp gaze scanning the space like an audience member watching a theatrical performance. People often said Barron was unlike other young men his age. While many teens sought excitement and thrived on attention, Barron exuded a unique maturity and quiet confidence. Perhaps it was his upbringing and constant presence in the public eye that shaped his character. But tonight, he wasn't here as the son of a former president, just a young guest attending an event with a meaningful cause. The gala unfolded seamlessly in a warm and sophisticated ambiance. Exquisite hors d'oeuvres were served, from premium seafood to intricately crafted desserts, satisfying even the most discerning guests. Stories about various charity projects were shared, accompanied by gentle laughter and nods of understanding from the attendees. Yet the moment everyone anticipated the most was the keynote speech by a renowned journalist who had been invited as the evening's featured speaker. Beside Barron, the room was filled with many other prominent figures. In a corner near the stage, a renowned film producer was engaged in lively conversation with a social activist, both laughing heartily at a humorous anecdote. At a nearby table, a famous actress listened intently as a young author shared details about their latest book. Each person had their own story, their own journey, but tonight they all came together for a shared purpose: raising funds to help children in need. At the center of the room, a charismatic host took the stage to announce the upcoming program. With a warm, confident voice, she guided the audience through each segment, from introducing major sponsors to sharing heartfelt stories of children who had been helped by the charity. Every story she told was like a small spark, igniting compassion in the hearts of the guests. Meanwhile, Barron remained quiet but fully engaged. He listened carefully to each story, his thoughtful gaze reflecting a deep sense of contemplation. A waiter approached his table and quietly placed a glass of champagne in front of him. Barron smiled politely in thanks but didn't drink it. Perhaps he didn't want to distract himself, or maybe he simply didn't care for the drink. Occasionally, glances from other tables turned toward Barron, not because he sought attention, but because his calm presence felt like a refreshing breeze amidst the animated conversations filling the room. Some couldn't help but wonder how someone so young could exude such maturity and poise. As the room buzzed with anticipation, all eyes eventually shifted to the stage when the host introduced the keynote speaker. The famous journalist stepped forward, radiating confidence with a captivating smile. Known for their sharp writing and bold commentary on social issues, sometimes controversial but always compelling, they promised an unforgettable speech tonight. But no one in the room, not even Barron, could have predicted how the evening would take a surprising turn in just a few minutes. The journalists stepped onto the stage with their usual confidence. Dressed in a sleek black suit, they bowed slightly to the audience, their sharp gaze sweeping across the room as if assessing every subtle reaction. "Thank you all for being here tonight," they began with a smile, their voice exuding charm and warmth. At first, the speech seemed flawless. Witty anecdotes, compliments about the city, and praise for the charity created a light, comfortable atmosphere. Soft laughter echoed when they recounted almost knocking over a champagne tower at a similar event. "They invited me back, but this time They kept all the glassware far away from me, they joked, drawing a few chuckles. But after a few minutes, their tone began to shift. Subtle jabs started creeping into their remarks, aimed at prominent political figures. Let's not forget the man who made the color orange a national symbol, they quipped, clearly referencing Donald Trump. Scattered laughter followed, but not everyone found it amusing. Some guests shifted uneasily in their seats. Ignoring the growing tension, the journalist pushed on. Their playful jabs turned into harsher critiques, targeting Trump's policies and controversial statements. Let's be honest, without those 3 a.m. tweets, I'd be out of a job, they added with a loud laugh. This time, the audience's response was subdued, polite at best. Then, in what seemed like an intentional test of boundaries, the journalists turned their attention to Barron Trump. And of course, we can't forget his most overlooked legacy, a kid growing up in a golden tower with kafaf tweets as his bedtime stories. Though delivered with a mocking tone, the joke was met with an awkward silence. All eyes turned to Barron, who sat quietly at his table, calm and composed. He didn't flinch or show any visible reaction, but the sudden spotlight on him made the room feel heavy. Guests near Barron looked visibly uncomfortable. An older woman beside him gently placed a hand on his shoulder as a gesture of comfort, but Barron merely nodded in quiet acknowledgement, maintaining his poised demeanor. Across the room, some exchanged uneasy glances, while others shook their heads disapprovingly. Oblivious to the discomfort in the room, the journalist continued. It's hard to imagine growing up surrounded by such extravagance without becoming a comic book character. I'm sure he could write a book titled, How to Survive Breakfasts Served on Gold Plates. This time, the attempt at humor fell flat. Sparse, forced laughter echoed in the room, but most guests remained silent. Even the host, standing off stage, frowned in concern. Barron, meanwhile, stayed perfectly still. The soft glow of the chandelier above cast light on his face, highlighting an air of maturity far beyond his years. His sharp blue eyes surveyed the room, calm and unreadable. The room grew quieter as unease spread. The journalist, sensing the growing discomfort, fumbled for a sip of water, attempting to move on. But the damage had been done. The audience was no longer fully engaged with their speech. Everyone was waiting for Barron's response. For a long moment, Barron didn't move, and the silence became almost unbearable. Some guests whispered among themselves, speculating what he might do. The journalist, initially smug, now appeared visibly uneasy, their confident demeanor cracking. Finally, Barron rose from his chair. The sound of the chair scraping against the polished floor was sharp and clear, cutting through the silence. Every eye in the room followed him, breath held. Standing tall, Barron's posture radiated confidence. He didn't rush. He took a moment to look around the room, meeting the gaze of several guests. It wasn't a glare, nor a look of defiance. It was steady and thoughtful, almost commanding respect. He began walking toward the stage, his steps measured and deliberate. Each movement carried a quiet strength that seemed to amplify the tension in the room. The journalist, now visibly nervous, avoided making eye contact, their earlier bravado completely gone. When Barron reached the stage, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was a blend of suspense, admiration, and nervous anticipation. Standing just below the stage, Barron paused, lifting his head to meet the journalist's gaze. For a brief moment, silence reigned, a silence so profound it felt like the calm before a storm. Then Barron stepped onto the stage. Instead of anger or reproach, he smiled, a polite, subtle smile that carried an understated power. He approached the microphone and began speaking. "Thank you for your speech," he said, his voice steady and calm. The simplicity of his words caught everyone off guard. There was no hint of bitterness, no sign of hostility, just a composed, measured tone that demanded attention. "You've said a lot about my family and my life," Barron continued, his voice clear and unwavering. "But what strikes me the most is, you've never actually met me." The room was utterly silent. Each word from Barron resonated with a quiet authority, and every guest hung on his every syllable. The journalist, now visibly uncomfortable, gripped the edges of the podium as if trying to ground themselves. Barron's tone softened, but his message remained firm. "Respect," he said, pausing for emphasis, "is not something people need to earn. It's something we should all extend to each other, regardless of who they are or where they come from. As Barron spoke, the mood in the room began to shift. What had started as a tense, uncomfortable situation transformed into a moment of quiet reflection. His words carried weight not because of his family name, but because of the sincerity behind them. The journalist, humbled, nodded slightly but said nothing. When Barron finished, the room erupted into applause, genuine, heartfelt, and louder than anything heard that evening. Barron adjusted the microphone slightly to match his height as he stood before it. In the silent room, even the sound of the audience's breathing seemed amplified. He took a deep breath, his sharp gaze sweeping across the ballroom where hundreds of eyes were fixed on his every move. "Thank you for giving me the chance to share," Barron began, his voice warm yet resonant, commanding immediate attention. "I'd like to start by saying that I don't hold any resentment for the remarks you just made. In fact, I'm grateful for them because they give me an opportunity to shed light on something far more important." He paused briefly, allowing the room to absorb his words. The audience remained still, hanging on to every syllable. The journalist, standing a few steps away, now wore an expression of unease, their earlier confidence replaced with visible tension. Barron continued, "My life, like many in this room, is often viewed through a narrow lens. My family, what I have, or even what I lack, all of it becomes a topic of discussion. But what I want to emphasize today is that behind every name, behind every story, is a person with feelings, aspirations, and yes, even vulnerabilities." His words struck a chord with many in the room. A few guests nodded subtly, their eyes reflecting a newfound empathy. Barron wasn't speaking just for himself. He was giving a voice to anyone who had ever been unfairly judged. "I'm not here to defend myself or my family," he said firmly. "Instead, I want to remind all of us about the power of words. We often underestimate it, but the words we choose can be the sharpest blades or the gentlest light. They can break someone or they can heal." The room was utterly silent. Even those who initially doubted the necessity of this speech were now captivated by Barron's sincerity. He didn't raise his voice, nor did he express anger. He simply spoke the truth, a truth many knew but rarely acknowledged. Then Barron turned to face the journalist, his gaze steady but devoid of accusation. "You've shared a lot of interesting things tonight," Barron said, a small, polite smile gracing his face. "I think you and I have something in common. We both believe in the power of words. But I hope we can use that power to build, rather than to tear others down." A soft sigh escaped from the journalist, as if they had just realized something significant. But Barron wasn't finished. He turned back to the audience, his voice unwavering. "I know we're living in a world full of division," he said. "The polarization in politics and society has created more distance between people. But I believe that by choosing kindness and understanding in our words, we can begin to close that gap." A smattering of applause broke out, but Barron gently raised a hand, signaling that he wasn't done. "Tonight, I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm simply hoping that when we leave this room, each of us will think a little more before speaking about someone else. Sometimes a kind word can change someone's life, and I believe that's worth it." When Barron finished, a long silence followed. Then from the front of the room, applause erupted, spreading like wildfire. Within moments, the entire ballroom was on its feet, not because of Barron's fame, but because of what he had said. His words weren't just a response to the journalists, they were a powerful call to action for everyone present. As Barron returned to his seat, the applause continued to fill the room. A few guests near the stage stood first, followed by others, until the entire audience joined in, creating a standing ovation unlike anything the event had seen before. Barron's face remained calm, but there was a flicker of emotion in his eyes, not pride, but relief. The host stepped back onto the stage, attempting to restore order to continue the program. But the energy in the room had shifted completely. Conversations sparked everywhere. Not about the gala, but about Barron's words. Near the door, a middle-aged businessman turned to his companion and remarked, "He's only 18, and he said all that." "Incredible," the other nodded, their gaze still fixed on Barron. "That's the kind of composure this world needs." As the event came to an end, some guests couldn't resist approaching Barron to express their admiration. An elderly woman, a retired teacher, gently placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "You're an incredible role model for the younger generation. Thank you for those words." Barron smiled politely and replied, "I just said what needed to be said." However, not everyone shared the same sentiment. A few people, including the journalist, appeared visibly uncomfortable. The journalist, now standing in a corner of the room, avoided meeting anyone's gaze and seemed to be wrestling with their own thoughts. After a moment, they walked over to Barron, extended a hand and said, "I want to apologize for crossing the line. What you said really made me think." Barron responded with a gentle smile, shaking their hand. "Thank you," he said. "I think we all have moments when we need to reflect." Within hours of the event, videos of Barron's speech flooded social media. A short clip of him saying, "Words have power. They can break or heal. Choose to use them kindly," quickly became the center of online discussions. A Twitter account with millions of followers posted, "No matter what you think of the Trump family, you can't deny that Barron just delivered an important lesson on respect and compassion." The post garnered hundreds of thousands of likes and shares within just a few hours. On TikTok, the hashtag number Barron Trump speech racked up millions of views, with countless videos and comments praising his maturity and composure. One high school teacher even shared that she had used his speech in her classroom to teach students about the power of words. By the next morning, the story wasn't just trending on social media, it had made its way to major news outlets. A morning talk show invited psychology experts to discuss how Barron handled the situation, calling it a prime example of exceptional maturity. Parents also used Barron's story to teach their children valuable lessons. One mother shared on Facebook, "I told this story to my 10-year-old son and encouraged him to learn how to stay calm and show respect in any situation." Even those who had previously paid little attention to Barron or the Trump family admitted that he had achieved something many adults struggle to do, turning a challenging moment into a meaningful lesson. From the gala event, Barron not only defended his own dignity, but also sparked a broader conversation about the value of respect and the power of words. He demonstrated that in a world full of chaos and division, calmness and kindness can still serve as guiding lights. As the story settled, it didn't fade away, but instead became a lasting reminder. Think before you speak, because you never know how powerful your words can be. Barron Trump's story didn't end with a charity gala. It became a profound lesson in how we treat one another in life. In a world rife with opposing opinions and judgment, Barron reminded us all that respect and kindness are always the right choices, no matter the circumstances. His words, gentle yet powerful, not only defended himself, but left the audience with a greater message. Words can be sharp weapons, but they can also be bridges that connect hearts. What about you? When faced with criticism or tense situations, how would you choose to respond? Do you believe that calmness and compassion can change your life and the lives of others? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories and perspectives. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like it and help spread this meaningful message to more people. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next inspiring story. Let's work together to make this world a better place, starting with kind words and loving actions. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in our upcoming stories. Love.